was reported missing in Haiti after an incident involving gangs. And lastly, the UK Supreme Court is expected to deliver its verdict on how women should be defined into law. The announcement marks the culmination of a long-running legal battle between the Scottish government and a women's group. The outcome could have far-reaching implications on how sex-based rights apply across Scotland, England and Wales. The Scottish government argues that transgender people with a gender recognition certificate are entitled to sex-based protection, while for women, Scotland argues they only apply to people that are born female. Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Mali as well as Morocco to contest the AFCON Under-17 final this coming weekend, while 7 nations plan the 2030-2034 Commonwealth Games bids. I have details of these and other stories at 12:30.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, thank you to Msibudi and Onele Nzinzi for our news and sports headlines. We are on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, on OpenView channel 628 and on www.channelafrica.co.za as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. And join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406 9126 #Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Mozambican health professionals have announced a new strike starting on Thursday, threatening to only work 8 hours a day and not to work on weekends. Milton Maluleke has more.
At stake are the demands of the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique, which for 3 years has been asking the government to provide medicines to hospitals, purchase hospital beds, resolve the lack of food, equip ambulance with emergency materials and non-dispensable personal protective equipment, pay overtime, and improve the framework within the scope of the single salary table. Anselmo Chaves, president of the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique, highlights. Health professionals are beginning a 30-day strike, which will be extended in phases. If the government continues with the standoff, we will intensify our strike. Healthcare professionals will suspend hospital care outside normal business hours. This is the first phase of the strike that begins this Thursday. Mushav adds the claims. The first phase will be the change of working hours due to the lack of observance of payments for overtime, shift allowances, emergencies. The first phase of our strike will observe our activities only in a fixed schedule from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. The lack of observance of the payment of overtime and shift allowances, as well as the rest period recommended by law, forces health professionals to suspend their shift work hours so that the government has peace of mind in calculation and seeking budgets for the payment of what is owed to health professionals. The information released at press conference led by the president of the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique once again accused the government of doing nothing to meet the demands of the medical professionals.
Estamos em Moçambique. Nem as manifestações não foram de consenso de todos.
We are in Mozambique and the recent protests were not agreed upon by everyone. The government pays people not to participate in the strikes, so we cannot say that the strike is agreed upon by everyone, because not all the press is represented here, even though they have no problems accessing this place. The government has been working normally since the protests and now it no longer wants to work with the people. So we must show that Mozambique cannot stop and the people cannot stop demanding. We cannot lie to the world that we do not have problems here at home, given that the country is not in a good shape and health professionals cannot be enslaved.
Não está bom, os profissionais de saúde não podem ser escravizados.
And the threats are already being felt by health professionals. This is according to Napoleão Viola, president of the Mozambican Medical Association.
Aqueles colegas que não vão trabalhar porque estão em greve têm estado.
Colleagues who have already agreed not to work in order to participate in the strike are receiving threats. In particular, those colleagues with weak employment ties, those who are contracted, and those who have professional appointments are all receiving pressure and intimidation that they will not be appointed permanently, will not progress in their careers, or that their contracts will not be renewed. All of this has been happening. The Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique's leadership also recommends that health professionals who notice a lack of work material in their sectors do not try any alternative means but wait for the government to provide them. Reporting from Maputo to Channel Africa News, I'm Milton Malulek.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
It is 11 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. A roadside bomb in northeastern Nigeria has killed 8 people and wounded dozens more when it struck a passenger bus, though. Meanwhile, at least 51 people were killed in the early hours of Monday in Nigeria's Plateau state, just 2 weeks after deadly clashes killed at least 52 people and displaced nearly 2,000 more. Our Plateau state has a history of violence between farmers and cattle herders. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by our correspondent in Nigeria, Jonathan James Liam Kong. Jonathan, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu.
Jonathan, a passenger bus bombed in northeastern Nigeria, 51 people early hours of Monday morning, and clashes of 52 people losing their lives because of these clashes between farmers and cattle herders. What is happening?
So over the years, there's been the narrative and the perspective about it being clashes between farmers and herders. But there are actually multiple different type situations that tend to be playing out. One of them does happen to be clashes, but in this case of what transpired on Monday night in Plateau State, in the Bokos local government area of the state, was more of a case of armed banditry and a clear attack on a community in the wee hours of the night. And over the past several years, because of these situations that have been happening, that we've had a major military base stationed in that area, which really begs the question: how did this happen? Because following my follow-up on the story since it developed, what we discovered is the distance from where the attacks took place and where the community that were attacked is not more than about 6 kilometers apart. And as has happened with other attacks, the pattern is that the attackers come in the night, late in the night, set houses ablaze, pull people out, shoot at random, and leave. Though, from an earlier statement that the governor made when he was drawing the attention of the federal government, he said some of these communities that have been attacked, what has happened in a pattern is that the goal is to get the villagers in those places to leave, and the attackers in turn tend to take over. Analysts have also put forward the fact that so many things are at play. There are cases of illegal mining that are taking place. So some of these attackers come, get people out so they are able to do illegal mining. There have been accusations of land grabbing. There are just several things that just leave one wondering. But the most critical thing was when the governor of that state went to the community on yesterday, earlier in the day, he himself said he acknowledges that the government has failed the people because it is the government's role to protect the people. And he said they have put in place a lot of measures to try to ensure that people stay very protected, but clearly those measures have failed. And he said they have failed the people. They will go back to the drawing board and they'll do everything possible to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But this
Now, Jonathan,
kind of follows in the pattern.
Jonathan, let's now move from Plateau State. We'll come back to it. But I want to find out about the roadside bombing where I think literally 8 people lost their lives and dozens more were wounded. And what are the authorities saying with that regard? What has happened? Do they know who is behind this bombing? And what's the reaction on the ground?
No, this happened in the northeast of the state, and sadly, the government hasn't identified who is directly responsible, but they've accused the frequent culprits, who are the various Islamic extremists that have been working or operating in that area. Now, if you're familiar with the Damboa, it's in a place called Damboa Maiduguri Highway. It is very synonymous with armed banditry, which has gone on for well over 15 years. That's the heart of Boko Haram's operation. So far, following that attack, the government has only just acknowledged that it happened, but they haven't stated who is responsible. Yesterday, I called and tried to reach the Borno State Police Command to get details, but my call wasn't taken by the state's public relations officer.
Jonathan, very quickly, just in wrapping up, there has been strong criticism against President Bola Tinubu and the lack of assistance of people in Plateau State. And then also, the country is facing an outbreak of Lassa fever. How's the fight going to curb the outbreak, and what sort of action has government taken on that front?
Let me start with the case of Lassa fever and then come back to the reaction about President Bola Tinubu and how he's handling things. With regards to the Lassa fever, the government yesterday, through the National Center for Disease Control, NCDC, released a statement to give an update on the situation, and it says between January and now, over 600 and something cases have been recorded, and over 100 people have died. There have been about over 100 fatalities following that. And what they were doing was letting people know. It was basically a sensitization effort to let people know how they will prevent things. But Lulu, the thing is, this is almost an annual pattern. Lassa fever has been around in Nigeria for a while, and almost every year the situation develops, and it just begs the question, why hasn't there been more serious efforts to work towards vaccination? How many more people will have to die? And what is being done about hygiene?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Jonathan, because of time, we're going to have to leave it here for today. But thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you, Lulu.
That's our correspondent in Nigeria, Jonathan James Liam Gon, joining us on the line.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 20 after 12 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our South Africa's Film and Publications Board is looking at clamping down on social media sites that disseminate harmful content. Now, the mandate of the FPB is to limit hate speech, propaganda for war, the non-consensual sharing of intimate images, and the distribution of child sexual abuse material. The FPB was updating the Select Committee on Economic Development in Parliament on the work done to protect South Africans from online harm. The board's acting CEO, Ephraim Tlhako, told the committee that predators are rife online and children are easy targets. We are now joined on the line by the board's acting CEO, Ephraim Tlhako. Ephraim, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu, and thank you for having us.
Now, Ephraim, tell us how you're going to clamp down on social media sites, and which sites are you looking at in particular?
So we have a mandate as the board to regulate distribution and classification of content, specifically as it relates to social media platforms or online platforms. We're finding prohibited and harmful content, and our act is very clear on what is defined as prohibited and harmful content. So across all social media platforms, there's this distribution of harmful content that should not be accessible by children. So we're working very closely with all the social media platforms, online platforms, in ensuring that we can remove that harmful content. So we're not specifically on specific social media platforms, but across all the social media platforms, working with law enforcement agencies as well in terms of collaboration, and also working with internet service providers for issuing social media platforms with takedown notices, because if content is harmful, it is deemed to be harmful in terms of our act. They have a duty to take down the content.
And what are some obstacles that you are facing, if any?
So the challenges that we are finding out is that sometimes it takes social media platforms and online platforms, it takes them time to take down content. So we would really like for them to start being much more proactive, picking up harmful and prohibited content much more quicker before it catches fire, because sometimes it is already late by the time we come in or there are complaints coming in. You find that harmful content has already been shared across multiple users, multiple social media platforms. So we really urge platforms to quickly, as soon as they are picking up something, at least from their side, they can quickly then take out the content out there. Another issue that they're also picking up is that we are limited in terms of our online safety program, but we're doing our best to cover as much as possible, expand our reach, ensuring that we can then preach to parents, preach to teachers and learners as well on how to behave online and how to be vigilant and protect themselves online.
Now, there have been a number of issues that have surfaced lately, and you've taken action on them. Are you able to tell us about some of the things that you have got right and some things that you feel could have been done better or handled better?
So, yes, the collaboration for us really works well for us. We are part of the Global Online Safety Regulators Network. And then we are also part of the InHope, which is the network of international hotlines dealing with child sexual abuse material. We have also partnered with law enforcement agencies. So I think the partnership has really worked very well for us. The messages that we have sent to the schools, to the communities, ensuring that people are aware of the dangers, especially within social media platforms. One thing that we're also picking up is the self-generated child sexual abuse material, because children with devices that are connected to the internet, they may not be aware of the dangers that are there. They may be generating this content on their own, but then predators are then willing to take those kind of images and trade them, producing them, generating them, and then selling them to those that are willing to pay for them. So we'd like to send a message out there that please work with us and ensuring that all of us are then protected, especially the vulnerable groups. The children need to be protected on the online space.
Ephraim, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you.
That was the South African Film and Publication Board's acting CEO, Ephraim Tlhako, joining us on the line.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
25 after 12 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. A multidisciplinary law enforcement operation led by South Africa's Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, known as the Hawks, has resulted in the successful rescue of a 45-year-old American citizen, reportedly a local pastor who had allegedly been kidnapped in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape province of the country. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by the spokesperson at the South African Police Service, Lieutenant Colonel Avele Fumba. Lieutenant Colonel, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu, and thanks for having us.
Now, firstly, what happened to the 45-year-old American pastor?
All right, Lulu, just a second. Hello?
Colonel, are you there?
Lulu?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear us?
All right.
Okay, please go ahead. I was just trying to find out from you exactly what happened. When did this kidnapping happen? And, what were the circumstances? All right, we seem to be having some connection issue there with the Lieutenant Colonel Avele Fumba. While we try and get him back on the line, you're listening to Africa Update, coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.
Big news from Channel Africa. Now you can listen and watch your favorite shows on Channel Africa. Channel Africa is streaming live on the internet on all our social media pages at Channel Africa 1 from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. Central African Time. Download the SABC Plus app or visit our website www.channelafrica.co.za and stream us live on all our social media pages at Channel Africa 1. Channel Africa now streaming for your eyes and ears only. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
The South African Police Service Lieutenant Colonel Avele Fumba joins us once again. Colonel, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu. I'm sorry, but my reception is not so well this side. But
you sound great right now. Just give us an update. When did the kidnapping happen? What exactly happened? And, where was the pastor held?
All right, Lulu, what transpired on this fateful day, on the Thursday, the 10th of April 2025, at about 1900 hours? Well, a man believed to be a pastor of a local church around here in Motherwell area in Gqeberha was allegedly confronted by 4 unknown armed suspects, during the church service. Then the reports, they further indicate that the suspect allegedly forced the victim into his own vehicle and fled the scene with him. So the police responded on that, Lulu. As you know, that the matter is it automatically falls now within the jurisdiction mandate of the Hawks. Then a multidisciplinary task team consisting of various specialized units, they were activated immediately. Then the team currently followed all the possible leads, and then up to today now, of which it actually landed us into this the recovery of the 45-year-old American, of which the national is a American victim who happened to I think I've mentioned that he's an American pastor.
Yeah, so now did this happen, you mentioned the fact that it happened during a church service. So were there a number of witnesses there? And with regards to now the suspects, are the suspects known to the police? There was a shootout, there was loss of life, but give us details in terms of what is the process now going forward, and what is the demand? Why was he kidnapped?
Look, Lulu, to be quite frank with you, the reason for kidnappings in our lately in our province, it came in. It actually comes in many different formats. For example, there is a reason probably for a ransom or financial gain, where you find that criminals may target individuals or families that believed to have access to a certain money or something, of which that is why we, in most cases, you find that we go around as the Hawks, educate people around this issue of sharing their financial muscle to the social media and so on. But in this case, it's not the situation, but I'm just saying that those are some of the predicament situations that we encounter, where you find that people, they're exposing their financial muscle. Then there are many different formats for kidnapping. Some, it happens, we find that it's a domestic-related matter, where the kidnapping occurs in a context of, custody battles and so on. Then the other one is human trafficking, where you find that it's vulnerable individuals, your women and children. So, but the one that normally happens now, which the one that the Hawks have just, effectively executed, this recovery. It is the one that was for ransom demand.
Now, were the suspects known by the police at any point in time? Were the suspects under investigation, or are these new people in the game, so to speak?
I beg your pardon?
In terms of the suspects, I'm trying to find out as we wrap up, were these people known by the police? Were they ever arrested before? Were they out on bail or from other cases, or was it just was this a new case altogether for them?
Well, on this one, Lulu, that matter, it's still, because of it's still under investigation at this moment. But what we know is that all the three suspects that were found in that vehicle who responded to the police because of a shock, then they opened fire to the police, they were all fatally wounded. So the matter is still under investigation. That we're still going to need to establish whether they are positively linked to other cases, of which that might also be possible. But we do trust the quality of our investigation. It will assist us to reveal of who are these people that were fatally wounded.
Well, Lieutenant Colonel Fumba, thank you for joining us on Africa Update. We'll leave it there for today.
Thank you so much.
That's Lieutenant Colonel Avele Fumba, spokesperson at the South African Police Service, joining us on the line. Our news headlines up next with Onelin Zinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. France says it will expel 12 agents serving in the Algerian consular and diplomatic network in France and will recall its ambassador to Algiers for consultation. This has happened after Algeria asked 12 French embassy staff to leave the country within 48 hours yesterday. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot says this is linked to the indictment of 3 Algerians in France on Friday. Severe flooding in the Democratic Republic of Congo has displaced nearly 10,000 people in Tanganyika province, with the crisis being worsened by ongoing conflict. And the head of the UN's nuclear watchdog is due in Iran ahead of a second round of talks between Tehran and Washington. Channel Africa News, I am Onelin Zinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you, Onele. We'll say good afternoon to Sibudi Makura with our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good morning. Good afternoon from the Sports Desk. We'll start with the story. So it's down to the final 2 at the AFCON Under-17 tournament. The host side, Morocco, will face off with Mali in Saturday's final. This is after they won their respective semi-final matches on Tuesday. So in a thrilling encounter marked by tactical discipline as well as missed chances, Morocco edged Cote d'Ivoire 4-3 on penalties after a goalless draw in 90 minutes of regulation time. Both sides crafted several promising opportunities, yet were ultimately led down by leaving the deadlock intact until the decider. Mali, meanwhile, booked their place in the final of this competition with a commanding 2-0 win over Burkina Faso in Tuesday's other semi-final in Casablanca. A goal in each half was enough to send the Young Eagles through to Saturday's championship match, where they will face off with Morocco for the big title of the Under-17 Africa Cup of Nations tournament. Further field now, Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta says they have no fear of facing Real Madrid at the Santiago Bernabeu tonight and will play to win the game despite already holding a 3-0 advantage from the first leg. So last week's victory at the Emirates Stadium, secured by Declan Rice's free kicks as well as Mikel Merino's third goal, has put Arsenal in a very commanding position for a place in the semi-finals of Europe's elite cup competition. Arteta says they have to prove again that they can beat Real Madrid away from home.
172 days or something like this, but it doesn't matter. We have to prove it now in this context, and that's the beauty of it. That's the challenge, and that's the great thing about sports, and that we've shown that we are capable of doing it. That has to give us reassurance and confidence that we can do it. And now let's talk on the pitch and do it on the pitch. It's the only thing that matters. The same mindset, the mindset to win, to be brave, to be dominant, to be determined, and to have the conviction that we can be better than them and win the game.
At the same time, Real Madrid have only managed to come back from a 3-goal first leg deficit once in their history against Derby County. It was a 6-5 win on aggregate in the 1975-1976 season. Real Madrid midfielder Jude Bellingham was asked about remontada, which is the Spanish word for a comeback, and this is what he had to say.
Remontada. Honestly, I've heard it about 1 million times since last week. I've seen 1 million videos online and made by fans, made by kind of you guys, I suppose, and really motivating stuff. It's a night that's made for Real Madrid, a night that would go down in history, but also be something that people are familiar with around this part of the world. So, hopefully we can add another special night.
Onto this now. Fears that Glasgow 2026 might be the last ever Commonwealth Games that have been alleviated after 7 nations lodged official expressions of interest to host the 2030 and 2034 Games. Scotland's largest city stepped in last year with plans for a scaled-back Games next summer after the Australia state of Victoria withdrew for financial reasons. Now, those proposed changes to the event, fewer sports, fewer athletes, fewer venues, have now lessened the cost as well as enticed other potential host nations to look at future stagings. Now, Canada, India, Nigeria, plus 2 other nations have publicly confirmed their interest in the Centenary Games in 2030, while New Zealand are one of those 2 nations also looking at hosting the 2034 edition. In January, the 74th Commonwealth Games nations were invited to lodge notes of interest, and the 7 who responded positively, all from Africa, Asia, as well as Americas and Oceania, will have a feasibility of their bids examined over the next 5 months. It is also expected that the host of the 2030 Games will be finalized by November of this year. And finally, the person who spat on cyclist Mateo van der Poel during last month's E3 Saxo Bank Classic has been identified and fined, according to Belgian police. Now, Dutch rider Van der Poel, who won the race on the 28th of March, was spat on in the East Flanders city of Ronze while leading solo with about 30 kilometers remaining in that race. The East Flanders Public Prosecutor's Office confirmed to BBC Sport a report that Ronze police had identified the culprit, who admitted at spitting on Van der Poel. The individual will now have to pay a fine of $400, but the case has now been taken not further, so he'll just pay that fine, and of course will have an opportunity maybe to get to watch cycling races in the near future, as opposed to being fined and banned for the rest of his future. It's a wrap from the sports desk at this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le Diamant Rouge aka Binalex Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des Lions. Voilà.
sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Our business news up next with Chanduko Lekeke.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. Namibia's central bank held its main interest rate, citing heightened global policy uncertainty as it raised its inflation forecast for this year and next. The decision to maintain the repo rate at 6.75% followed 4 consecutive rate cuts. The Bank of Namibia estimates that the country's economy will grow 3.5% to 4.0% this year, weaker than its projection of 4.0% growth at its last policy meeting in February. Namibia's central bank says its latest policy decision also aimed to safeguard the peg between the Namibian dollar and the South African rand. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has commended the Eastern Cape province for the investment projects it has initiated to boost the micro and macro economies of the countries through its ports. Ramaphosa had been on an oversight visit to the province where he was briefed on the performance of the Guga Special Economic Zone, one of the best performing SEZs in the country. The port has employed around 300,000 people since its inception in 1999. Ramaphosa says there is so much potential for economic growth. Sentiment among South African business people continued to improve in March. South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry Business Confidence Index (BCI) in March remained above recent lows despite a dip of 2.3 index points from the previous month. The BCI showed that last month's level was still 8.8 index points higher than the same period last year. Nosipo Hadebe reports.
In February, the business confidence surged to a recent record level of 125.8 index points from a slump of 107.8 in May 2024, when South Africans took to the polls. On a month-to-month basis, business sentiment was dragged down by fewer imports, a weaker rand, and declining share prices on the JSE.
Algerian energy firm Sonatrach says it has signed 2 memorandums of understanding with U.S. shale company Occidental Petroleum to expand cooperation in hydrocarbon exploration and production in Algeria. The MOUs were signed on Monday on the sidelines of the U.S.-Algeria Energy Forum 2025. Sonatrach is the largest company in Africa and a major player in the global energy industry. China has changed its top trade negotiator in the middle of its tug of war with the U.S. Li Changgang was Beijing's representative at the World Trade Organization. Beijing has also announced that its economy grew by more than 5% in the first 3 months of the year. The BBC's Stephen McDonnell has the details.
He's someone who was China's ambassador to the World Trade Organization in Geneva. And so if you're going to have somebody at the helm leading the trade negotiations, it's going to have to be someone with a lot of experience. Now, his appointment came out on the same day that the first quarter growth figures came out here, actually better than expected.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 603, in Botswana 13 pula 76. Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 853. Zambia 28 kwacha 28. BRICS countries $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 86. Russia 82 rubles 373. India 85 rupee 76. China 71.30. South Africa $1 is at 18 rand 93. $1 is at 75 pence to the British pound, 88 to the euro. Commodities: gold is at $3,304, platinum at $960 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $65.18 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email, newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligeke.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802 Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Well, thank you to Chanduko Lukeke with our business news. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406-9126 hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
It is 12:46 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. A severe flooding in the Democratic Republic of Congo has displaced nearly 10,000 people in Tanganyika province. The crisis is being worsened by ongoing conflict, food insecurity, and disease outbreaks as humanitarian needs escalate and aid agencies warn that urgent support is needed. Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabange has more.
In recent weeks, torrential rainfall has triggered flooding in Tanganyika province, displacing almost 10,000 people. The Rugumba River burst its banks, submerging large parts of Kalimi and Nyunzu territories. Homes, schools and farmlands were washed away, and many families are now without shelter or livelihoods. Eugene Bune is the spokesperson for the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR.
Severe flooding triggered by torrential rain in recent weeks has displaced almost 10,000 people in Tanganyika province in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This unfolding emergency reflects the double crisis facing the DRC, where extreme weather shocks, such as a flooding compound the suffering caused by ongoing conflict and mass displacement. The Rugumba River burst its banks, flooding large area of Kalemi and Nyunzu territory. Homes, schools, and agricultural land have been destroyed, leaving 1,000 without shelter or livelihood.
The stagnant floodwaters now pose a serious public health threat. According to the UN, reported cholera cases in Tanganyika are already 6 times higher than this time last year. The flooding has overwhelmed a community already under pressure from earlier displacement due to conflict. Bune explains the growing concerns.
Stagnant and contaminated floodwaters are raising concerns over the risk of disease outbreaks, with reported cholera cases in the province already 6 times higher than during the same period last year. The flooding has hit a community already under severe strain. Since January, Tanganyika has received around 50,000 internally displaced people fleeing violence in neighboring South Kivu area. Many had been sheltering in local homes, churches and schools, now damaged or destroyed.
Since January, Tanganyika province has received around 50,000 people fleeing violence in South Kivu. Many sought refuge in homes, churches and schools now damaged or destroyed by the floods. While UNHCR and its partners are delivering emergency relief, funding shortfalls are slowing the response. Bune says thousands are still without help.
UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, and humanitarian partners are providing emergency support, including shelter, clean water, food, and medical care. However, response efforts are hindered by critical funding gaps, leaving thousands without the aid they urgently need at the moment. In addition, reports indicate that some Congolese refugees who recently fled to neighboring Burundi have since returned to DRC. Many cited dire living situation, including limited access to food, shelter, and basic services as a key factors influencing their decision to return, even in the face of a persistent conflict and uncertainty in DRC.
Uganda alone received over 5,500 refugees in just 1 week. Aid agencies are calling for greater international support to assist both displaced Congolese and the communities that are hosting them, as the DRC faces one of Africa's most complex humanitarian crisis. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Climate negotiators and government officials from 46 least developed countries are meeting in Blantyre, Malawi, to reflect on the outcome of COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. This meeting is for Africa and other LDCs to integrate loss and damage priorities into nationally determined contributions and national adaptation plans to strengthen negotiating position at COP30 and beyond. LDC's Group Chairperson Evans Njewa says strategies will be laid out to ensure that needs of affected nations are addressed at COP30 in Brazil this year. George Mango reports from Blantyre.
By the end of the meeting, climate negotiators and government officials will have deliberated on how to access $300 billion in annual climate finance and explore modalities for finalizing the roadmap to mobilize $1.3 trillion in climate funding. The meeting also comes at a time when climate and weather experts say African countries are losing between 5 to 15% of their gross domestic product (GDP) to climate change and extreme weather, costing developing economies more than $525 billion. This is on the pretext that climate change caused increasingly severe and irreversible damage to Africa's ecosystems, infrastructure, and livelihoods, thereby affecting communities despite their minimal contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions. Malawi's Minister of Natural Resources and Climate Change, Owen Chomaniga, who opened the meeting, noted that as effects of climate change worsen, affected countries should push for climate action to build resilience for sustainable development. Chomaniga thinks African countries have failed to access climate financing due to failure to meet loan conditions and present clear developed strategies of getting funds to help victims of climate change.
As countries who are least developed, we need to come up with a proper strategy on how best we can deal with issues of climate, because we need to adapt and also mitigate some of the issues as we are taking our people in the development path. So it's just to encourage them to take this very seriously, because we need a strategy, and we need a strategy that has got proper operations and proper tactics aligned to the development of these countries, so that at least as countries which are least developed, we should be able to be in the path where we can graduate and become developed.
Ode Sanka, manager in the Adaptation Division of the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat, says while it is critical that efforts be maintained to secure just and equitable climate finance, it is also important that in the current global context, LDCs make renewed efforts to make diversified, homegrown solutions to scale up climate finance.
So there's a need to supplement the grants and the concessional loans with a lot of other financial engineering solutions, so what's called innovative finance. So finding new ways of raising capital that will actually raise the huge amounts of money needed to address climate change.
Evans Njewa, who is the LDC's group chairperson, says unlocking timely and effective support from the newly operational fund for responding to loss and damage remains their wish.
We are doing maybe 2-3 things. One is to again look at what happened in Baku in Azerbaijan at the COP29 as a group, we meet and look at the outcomes. What did we gain? What did we not gain? Then, as you may have heard already, the next conference of the parties will be held in Brazil, in Belém, in the Amazon region, in November. But also a preparatory session will be held in Bonn, Germany, in June. So the group will also be preparing for those, so that when we go into those meetings, we are ready as a group. We have our priority areas, and then we speak as one group with one voice.
Delegates to the meeting have agreed that time has come for the 46-member country group to ensure that priorities are synchronized and clear ahead of COP30 in Brazil. What is also clear is that affected countries want to build coherence in the light of shifting global geopolitical dynamics that impact climate finance. Malawi is hosting the meeting as chairperson of the United Nations Group of the Least Developed Countries, LDCs, on climate change. George Mohango, Channel Africa News, Blantyre.
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Tamo kutuli branchi ndi
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
And we say good afternoon to Tabuho Lekuleni. And coming up with the Upside team at the top of the hour. It's Wednesday. Happy Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. Happy Hump Day.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. And how are you?
I'm fantastic. Great conversations you were having today.
No, thank you.
An important one.
The
social media one. Yeah. Clamping down on harmful content, especially for children.
Yeah.
And then I'm also, when I was listening in on the conversation, I was like, actually adults as well. I've seen so many scam accommodation sites where they show you this beautiful accommodation. You're like, oh my God, I want to go there. And the price point is unbelievable, unmatched. And then when you Google search it, you realize, no, this accommodation is somewhere in Australia. It's not in Johannesburg, as they have said.
And if it's too good to be true,
it usually is. Yeah. Stay away from it. Exactly. Stay away from it. Anyway, coming up on the Upside this afternoon, we talk bucket list, we talk sense of adventure, and we talk taste buds. We're heading over to Zimbabwe, where the battle between fast food and homegrown favorites